is quite loud without the exhaust. At least there's a reason to put the exhaust on now. Oh, hello. Right. There we are. Ooh. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was air.
So we had it running, briefly as it turned out. Got it running and then all was fine for a few minutes, and then it conked out, and try as we might, we couldn't bleed the fuel through and get the air out the lines again to get it fired up again. It turned out, after much examination, that the push fit connections in the fuel lines were letting in air, and it turns out when I dismantled one of those, it was just a little O-ring that had given up. So we haven't done anything for a while. I've been waiting for these to turn up in the post. They've arrived. I haven't even checked they're the right size yet. Hopefully they are, and I can get it all sorted out. So I'll show you that connection. This is what I'm on about. These are the various bits of fuel line from the engine. So this is what goes, the last stage from the fuel tank to the lift pump on the engine is this one. This is what goes from the engine back to the fuel tank. This is the return line. And so, as you can see, both of these are aluminium, and then they have their connectors, and then they turn into this flexible plastic. And it's joints here. So this one goes on the end of this. And these are push fit connectors, which is hopefully coming into focus. And they're really handy because you just shove it in there, and when you want to extract it, you push this little collet back and pull it out again. And that's brilliant until it leaks. So what was happening, this one goes in there. So you imagine these lines being much longer, going all the way back to the fuel tank, and we've got another one in there. This one was sucking in air, which stops the engine running, and this one was losing diesel on the return line, which would get expensive. So when we open these up, it turns out, I didn't know this before, the collets come out. There's a little collet, and inside there is an O-ring. It's the tiny O-ring like that. But it's perished, and hence the joint's leaking. Okay, so they've got new O-rings. Let's put the collets back in. One and the other. Put some short bits of pipe in. Let's go test them. For an initial test, we've come outside the workshop where I've got a big tank of air. Yeah, you know what, I think that's... black tape away from there. It's got to go onto the lift pump. The engine pipe's done. It's got this one here. So this is from the fuel tank there. Going to the engine. So plug this in. That is heartening. Yeah, it's very heartening. Let's see if we're building up in the air yet. So we've got no air in the system for the brakes or to pump up the tyres, and the clutch isn't working either, so yeah. Won't be driving anywhere just yet. It turns out I'd left all these taps open. That'd be why there's no air in the system. That's all 3 air tanks have got their taps tightened up now, which should actually build up some air. Cool. I'm only running it for a little bit at the moment. There's no engine fan. The radiator's only half full of water. Obviously I've got no instrumentation, so I'm having to go around it and just make sure it's not overheating or anything untoward is happening. But yeah, I'm very happy with that. So the air's coming up now. So the clutch should come into action. Obviously that's air over hydraulic clutch, and we'll even be able to pump up the tyres. Progress.
Trigger sensibly. MIDI data, which means that the MIDI input circuit here is working.
Yeah.
Which I've then got to feed into this board, which will then be able to control the big wind chest. And we slave out of that board into this old controller that used to control that one. Just tag that along the end of it, see if it works, because we've never tried using all 127 notes on one of the MIDI channels yet, these controllers. So that's something we need to work out. I need to work out which pins go where. 13, pin 7. That bugger right there. Yeah, I have to do some soldering, I think. Well, we've got some lights flashing there. They're plugged into the outputs of one of these boards just to test out that it works, which it does. We've got two boards here which are giving us 64 channels of 64 notes from a MIDI channel, which can be connected up to the chest, which will then be able to control 64 pipes. This setup here is what we used, our original prototype, which controlled these pipes plus the other little wind chest we had, which we could slave off of this board as well actually if we wanted to. So really it would just be a case of wiring this chest into these plugs, plug them in the boards, and we'd have the basics of a working organ, MIDI controlled, which is I think exactly what we're aiming for. So really we've got these lovely new control boards courtesy of Curious Devices, designed by me, and we can make as many of them as we want just to increase the size of our organ by 32 notes each time. Each board has an extra 32 notes to add on. So this is effectively now infinitely scalable. How big an organ do you want to build? Camera, but there's little fracture marks all over the place. Of course, this is a system-wide thing, and it seems that as the metalwork on these is degraded, they've ended up sitting loose. You've had to tighten the little clamps down. And I've got a horrible feeling that, judging by the fact that a few of these have been replaced in the past with more modern magnets, this has been something that's given reliability problems in the past, and I think it's going to be something that's going to bite us on the arse. Yeah, one note organ number 3, I think. Oh, look, that's quite convenient, isn't it?
And this is today's note.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just hold it. Just gently put your hand on it.
Here we go.
Is it going the right way? Not at all? Why not? Do you want to check it's not seized? Oh, can you switch the power off and find me a screwdriver, please? We've only got 2 phases connected.
Let's go round
now. Helps if you've got all 3 phases connected, it would seem. I think this is going to launch the thing.
Seems happy off the generator.
Good sign. This will test our one note organ for wind leaks, and it's got many. Right, well that's ciphering straight away, but that's because of the pipes. Purely down to the back pressure. I think if you pull it out, it'll close the valve. Open the hole a bit more.
Before I go any further then, I've just remembered that the gearbox hasn't got any oil in it. This is my tablet EP90 gearbox oil. I have to buy it in these huge containers because I own a Land Rover. So normally I'd get underneath it and use my comedy syringe here to force the oil in from underneath through the plug in the side, the gearbox. But today, because I've got all this access here, I'm going to try just taking off the gear stick, and I should be able to just pour the oil in through the top of the gearbox. which will save grovelling around on the ground. So the gearbox is empty. I've looked up the gearbox in the manual and it says 3.5 litres. So that's what I'm going to put in. 1, 2, 3, and a half. Right, let's pull this back together. Right, that's that. We should be able to start it up. Then I'm going to test the clutch and the gears and hopefully leave it running long enough to get some air in the system and pump these tyres up. For those of you that have forgotten, because we've been on this thing for so long, it's got a central tyre inflation system. So once the air is in for the air brakes, I can also pump the tyres up or indeed let them down. Okay. We've got air is coming up, which is good. We'll test the clutch then. That's the air releasing back out of the clutch, but it's working, so that's great. That's the air brake. Right. Now we should move forward just a tad. Yeah. Can't move any more, I'm going to knock the camera over. While I wait for that tyre to slowly pump itself up, I'm just going to clear everything from around the truck and well, just give it a test drive. I'm only going to go about 6 foot forwards and back, but that'll be enough to test that the transmission's working at least. It's in low ratio, so it should be able to do that even just on tick over. Yeah, we'll see. Let's have a look at that tyre. Yeah, still not great. The issue, I think, is that the compressor that's attached to this engine is much smaller than the one that was on the ZIL engine. This is the compressor that was off the ZIL engine. It's an absolute beast of a thing. Yeah, I'd say that's probably about at least 3 times the size of the one that's on the new engine. Anyway, just means it'll take a bit longer to pump up the tyres. right. And that test drive taught me two things. One, the transmission works fine, the new clutch and the new gear stick and everything, that's all great. Two, there's no way I can steer that without the power steering. No way, it just wasn't happening. I think that'll do. Got no fan and a leaky radiator. I'm very paranoid about overheating it. I don't think it would, but there's no need to risk it. That leak on the radiator then is just at the top there. This is the first time we've run the engine long enough for the thermostat to open and the water to circulate throughout the whole system, including the radiator. So effectively it's the first time that the radiator's been under pressure, and you can see it just haven't stopped now. It's run out. So it's hoofing out of that little bit there. I'm still hoping I can fix it. It does occur to me that I'm trying to steer it with relatively flat tyres still. Yeah, it might be drivable when they're properly pumped up. Yeah, but I doubt it. In case you think I'm just being a big baby about it, I used to own a Bedford MK, which is the British Army version of this, and that had no power steering, and I managed fine with that. It's simply a case of gearing. If you have a vehicle that's designed for manual steering, it's geared much lower in effect. It takes more turns of the wheel to get where you want to be, but obviously it's easier to turn the wheel. Yeah. This is kind of He-Man stuff. So yes, what do we need then? We need hydraulic steering, so I've got to connect up the pump to the steering box. Need an accelerator cable, need a radiator fan, and need to stop that leak. That's what's coming up next.